So recently, one of my graphics cards just set on fire and almost burned down my studio, which made me think about the power consumption of the GPUs. The M5 Max MacBook Pro, which I have over here, how good is it actually compared to some of the things that we have on the PC side? We know that Intel's doing great thing in offering us great value for our money, but can it compete with Apple? And we also know that AMD tries to find the same tracks and give you good performance for your money. Now, Apple's biggest competitor is the RTX 5090 this way. Can Apple actually compete with the 5090? And when it comes to laptops, this beast over here has an RTX 5090, the best mobile GPU you can have. Where is Apple actually at in terms of performance with their GPU? If you know the biggest chip manufacturers in the world, AMD, Intel, Qualcomm and Apple, they are all producing CPUs and GPUs. And there's a race with the GPU market and the CPU market. There is NVIDIA that hasn't released a CPU yet. Well, there are some talks that they might. But Apple has always used NVIDIA and AMD GPUs in their laptops, but have they finally figured out the tech to compete with the big boys? Well, Apple just said, hold my beer. Now we're gonna look at different 3D benchmarks, and if you're a gamer, I'm going to disappoint you. We're not gonna be looking at gamings. I'm gonna leave the best or worst news till last, so you just wait for it. We're gonna be looking at Cinebench R26 version. Now what this is basically Redshift. Well, it is Redshift render engine, and this is what us as creators use. This is just one of the benchmarks that we can see. How good is it when we're doing 3D work? 16-inch M5 Max, not 14-inch because that is actually throttling. You get the best performance on the 16-inch. We're gonna compare this to the 5090, which we can find here on mobile. And you can see that the mobile 5090 is 16% faster. That's impressive for Apple. RTX 4090, the desktop version that pulls 450 watts, not the 5090, I'm giving you the 4090 because the difference between 4090 and 5090 in terms of rendering performance is very, very little. They're using exactly the same node. They just put a different GPU architecture on the same chips that they get from TSMC, and the actual performance, raw performance difference is not much different. In fact, per watt performance difference is better on the 4090. The 5090 has some very clever tech, and if you're a creator, I still think it's the best thing. If you haven't seen, if you don't know why, go check it out. But for 3D, the 4090 is better. So 4090 is 66% faster than the M5 Max. AMD here, with their RX 9070 XT, this guy here, and this is probably one of the best versions of that card, is 45% slower. So Apple on their laptop is delivering twice the performance as AMD on a desktop. I can see why Apple fired AMD. Let's move forward. Geekbench 6i GPU. So this is where we see lots of different GPU tasks, what we're doing here. I'm gonna show you OpenCL and then Metal and Vulkan. The Metal and Vulkan can't be really compared with these scores, but I'm just gonna leave them there so you got some kind of a difference in there. But OpenCL is comparable across the board. There's different GPUs now here. RTX 5070 is 25% faster in the OpenCL, which is rather impressive. The RTX 5090 desktop version is more than twice the performance. As you can see, the yellow graph there is very, very high. And then the RX 9070 XT is 15.5% faster in the OpenCL, but then in the Vulkan Metal scores about 22% slower, which is interesting. Let's move on to the AI, as much as this is a controversial topic. And there is Geekbench 6 AI benchmark. So this is the GPU, and how does the GPU compare to different things? So looking at the single firstly, the RTX 5090, which is on the second column, you can see is 45.7% faster. Amazing. Half is 31.6% faster, and quantized scores is actually lower and slower, which is insane. Is this because of the VRAM capacity or the way VRAM works? I don't know. The Arc B50 Pro is about 45% slower in the single, 37% slower in the half, and about 76% slower in the quantized. That is quite a big L for Intel. But bear in mind, there is B60 and better versions available. So this is one of the most affordable Intel GPUs, and we're comparing it one of the best Apple GPUs, which is not really comparable, but I'm just throwing lots of different GPUs in there so you get a picture. RX 9070 XT, AMD is 22.98, so basically 23% faster in the single, about 3.7% faster in the half, and about 32% slower in the quantized. So it looks like Apple on quantized score is very, very good. I think there's a reason why everyone's buying the Mac Minis and Apple hardware for other AI models. Do you see what I mean? Now, moving on to Blender, another 3D application, and in here we can see that the RTX 5090 is, wow, okay, yes, that red line there is quite a bit better. 122%, so more than double the performance in Monster Scene. Junk Shop Scene is only 43% faster, and Classroom Scene 70.1% faster. The RTX 5070 Ti, 31% faster in the Monster Scene, 16% slower in the Junk Shop Scene, and Classroom Scene is basically the same. Well, it is the same. Are we saying that Apple's performance on the M5 Max is the same as RTX 5070 Ti on a desktop version? RX 9070 XT from AMD, 50% slower in the Monster Scene, 68% slower in the Junk Shop Scene, and 63% slower in the Classroom Scene. That is quite a big L. If we're looking at the RTX 3090, remember RTX 3090? That's 15% slower in the Monster Scene, 41% slower in the Junk Shop Scene, and 34% slower in the Classroom Scene. So the M5 Max absolutely whoops the RTX 3090. So remember the PC we built for Damien, the 3D artist, the most viewed video on our channel? That one had two RTX 3090s. Well, that is almost comparable with this guy here. Pretty insane that this guy can keep up with that one. And we spent like 15 grand a couple of years ago on that PC, which is ridiculous. Now, here comes the most shocking point. Power consumption. The M5 Max, when I've measured this, pulls about 40 watts maximum. That's the peak what I can see on this GPU. But it kind of goes down and so on. The RTX 5050, the lowest what NVIDIA offers is 130 watts. 130 watts, that is more than 3 times more than this laptop. Intel B50, or Pro B50, is 70 watts. It's still almost double the performance. The AMD, what you can see over here, is 170 watts. Just a comparison what we're using. Bear in mind, this 5090 pulls 575. Well, it can really pull 600 watts, okay? Now, moving performance per power consumption, which means that we're gonna look at the score that the GPU achieved and then divide that by the power we're actually using. We can get performance per watt. So per watt what we're using, how many points of performance are we gonna get? The M5 Max is 2047.5 points per watt on a Cinebench R26 render. So you don't know what the 2000 really means here. But if we're gonna reveal the RTX 5090 Mobile, that guy here from MSI, and this is the best. I mean, I've got no gripes with this one because this is amazing. And some guys really need this type of laptop. I've done a full video on this on the channel. But in terms of GPU comparison, this is not MSI's fault here. It is 73.5% slower. Now, the calculation, the way the percentages here work is a little bit maybe not so well understandable. But if you look at the graph in there, you can see that the blue column there, that blue skyscraper, is almost 4 times as high as the red. And that red is the best that NVIDIA can do. If we move on to the desktop RTX 4090, you can see that blue graph, that teal graph there. Can you see how that is almost half as what you see on the red? So what we see over here, when we move to desktop, we're dropping performance per watt almost in half. And the 4090 is 85.7% slower. This is not really helpful to see over there, but it's basically 7 times lower than what M5 Max offers. So 320.4 points times 7, and we're getting roughly somewhere where NVIDIA is. Now, this AMD RX 9070 XT 286.1 points, which means that that is even lower. We're now about 8 times lower, which is just absolutely insane. Now moving on to AMD, and this is the RX 9060 XT, not the 9070, 9060, that pulls 170 watts. The performance per watt is 286.1 points per watt. AMD is even lower. So what I just showed you is that Apple has entered the chat very strong. In terms of laptop GPU performance, with an asterisk certain cherry-picked applications, there is no competition. There's just Apple and the rest of them. Now, I understand that not every single program is comparable with this and not everything's working on Apple's ARM system, but that is just absolutely ridiculous. The M5 Max takes it to a whole other level. And what NVIDIA is doing with the RTX 5090 pushing the wattage limits to the cable's maximum 600 watts, it almost feels like it's cheating. NVIDIA, have you run out of invention? Have you run out of ideas how to increase performance and we just need to push more power through? Because Apple's saying, we're going to consume a drop of that and we'll offer you the same performance. Let's just say the PC GPU market is slightly screwed, and I'm super excited what Apple's doing. Congratulations! If you've reached this part of the video, you're in the top 13% of people's attention graph. And there's more than 50% chance that you seeing this means you're not subscribed. So consider subscribing, hitting that bell icon, liking the video. It would mean a world to us. If you'd like to get detailed access to our internal benchmark database of CPUs, GPUs, SSDs, and so on for creators, then may I invite you to sign up to our newsletter where we send out relevant information a couple of times a month when there is information. I'm not interested in flooding your inbox. This is when there is good information to share for your creative workflow. Then we'll send those emails out. And also you'll get the most exclusive access to some of the behind the scenes, perhaps even giveaways. So scan that QR code or link in the description below. If you've got any urgent questions to me personally, you can always reach out on Minect. I'll always get back to my messages. If you're looking for a new hoodie, may I recommend this one. This is not just any cheap random hoodie. This is a high quality hoodie that you can get. And when purchasing this, we get a small little kickback to help us build what we're building here. My passion is to help creators choose the best tech for their workflow and help them save some money in the process. This is Tech Notice, and if you've reached this part of the video, you have been upgraded to the top 5% of the people who ever see this part. And now YouTube thinks that you'll like this video, and if you haven't subscribed, you can do it on this side. Thanks very much, guys, for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.